The cantina on Epsilon Prime was dark and smoky. Old Kethvar sat in the corner booth, his three eyes staring into his drink. The young Zara leaned forward, eager to hear another war story from the veteran. Her purple skin showed the curiosity that all young Vorthak possessed. "Tell me about the humans again," she whispered. "Tell me why everyone fears them so much." Kethvar lifted his massive head. Scars covered his face from battles long past. His voice was deep and rough when he spoke. "You want to know about humans? I will tell you about Kepler Station. That was where I first learned what these creatures really are." He took a long drink and began his tale. "This happened 3 years into the war. I was younger then, strong and proud. I commanded 200 of our finest warriors. We were elite soldiers trained since birth to fight and kill. The High Command gave us a simple mission: capture Kepler mining station." Kethvar's claws scraped against the table as he remembered. "Intelligence told us only 30 humans defended the station. 30 against 200 Vorthak warriors. We laughed. We thought it would be easy. How wrong we were." Zara's eyes grew wide. She had heard whispers of this battle, but never the full story. The station floated in space near a dead planet. It was huge, built into an asteroid. The humans used it to mine rare metals. Our ship surrounded it completely. There was no escape for them. Kethvar paused, his breathing heavy. We sent messages demanding surrender. No answer came. Our scanners showed life signs scattered throughout the station. The humans were hiding deep inside, waiting for us. The old warrior's voice grew darker. I led the first assault team through the main airlock. The corridors were empty and dark. Our boots echoed in the silence. Everything seemed normal at first. Too normal. He shook his head sadly. That should have been our first warning. Humans are never normal. They think differently than any other species in the galaxy. Where we see a mining station, they see a weapon. Where we see corridors, they see kill zones. Zara leaned closer, not wanting to miss a word. We spread out through the station as planned. My warriors were confident. We had fought many battles and won them all. But this place felt wrong. The air recyclers made strange noises. The lights flickered at odd times. Some corridors seemed longer than they should be. Kethvar's three eyes focused on something far away. The first attack came from below. The floor exploded under squad leader Vextal. He fell through into darkness, screaming. We tried to help him, but the hole sealed itself somehow. We never saw him again. The cantina seemed to grow quieter around them. Then Warrior Grixmoth vanished from the rear guard. One moment he was there, the next moment gone. No sound, no struggle, just empty space where a soldier used to be. Kethvar's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That was when we realized the truth. The station itself was hunting us. The humans had not run away or hidden. They had become part of the place. Every wall, every pipe, every shadow was their weapon. He took another drink before continuing. Commander Jake Morrison revealed himself first. He stepped out of what looked like solid wall holding a human weapon. Behind him came more humans, but they moved like ghosts. They knew every secret passage, every hidden room. Zara gasped softly. Morrison spoke to us over the station's communication system. His voice came from everywhere at once. He said something I will never forget. "Welcome to our home. You are not leaving." Kethvar's scarred face showed old fear. The killing began in earnest then. The humans used the mining equipment against us. Massive drilling machines became weapons of war. Conveyor belts carried our warriors into crushing devices. Acid used for processing ore became deadly traps. He paused, remembering the horror. But the worst part was not the machines. It was how the humans fought. They never faced us directly. They struck from shadows and disappeared. They used our own tactics against us, but better than we ever could. The old warrior's claws extended unconsciously. Lieutenant Lisa Barnes was their sniper. She hid in the ventilation system for 18 hours without moving. 18 hours, no food, no water, barely breathing. She waited for the perfect shot. Kethvar touched a scar on his neck. She killed communications officer Zeftal with one bullet. He was standing right next to me when his head exploded. I never even saw where the shot came from. Without Zeftal, we could not coordinate our forces. We became scattered and confused. Zara shuddered at the image. The humans began their psychological warfare then. They played recordings of our dead warriors, screaming through the station speakers. They left false evidence that massive reinforcements were coming to help them. They made us think we were surrounded. Kethvar's voice became bitter. Some of my warriors went mad from fear. They began shooting at shadows, at each other, at nothing. The humans had turned our minds against us without firing a shot. He stared into his drink again. Hour by hour, our numbers dropped. Warriors disappeared into maintenance shafts and never returned. Others fell through false floors into traps below. Some were found later, alive but driven insane by things they had seen in the dark. The cantina around them seemed to fade as Kethvar continued his story. By the 10th hour, half my force was gone. By the 20th hour, only 50 warriors remained. We tried to retreat to our ships, but the humans had sealed the docking bays. We were trapped in their maze. Zara realized she was holding her breath. "Commander," Morrison appeared again. This time he was not alone. 12 humans stood with him in the main corridor. Just 12, facing 50 Vorthak warriors. We should have crushed them easily. Kethvar laughed, but there was no humor in it. They did not fight like any soldiers I had ever seen. They moved like they had rehearsed this battle 1,000 times. Every step was planned, every shot was perfect. They fought not just with weapons, but with the station itself. His voice grew quiet with remembered awe. Lieutenant Barnes appeared, above us, hanging from pipes in the ceiling. She dropped explosive charges while Morrison's team attacked from the front. The walls themselves seemed to open up, revealing more humans firing from hidden positions. Kethvar touched several scars on his arms. In 20 minutes it was over. 50 elite Vorthak warriors reduced to 12 survivors. The humans had not just defeated us. They had made us look like children playing at war. He finished his drink and signaled for another. Morrison let us go. He could have killed us all, but he chose not to. As we limped back to our ships, he spoke to us one last time. He said, "Tell your commanders what you saw here. Tell them this is what happens when you invade a human home." Zara sat back, overwhelmed by the story. "The worst part," Kethvar continued, "was the casualty report. 30 humans had defended that station. When it was over, 30 humans were still alive. They had not lost a single soldier. Not one." The old warrior looked directly at Zara. "That was my first lesson about humans. They do not just fight to win battles. They fight to send messages. Every human position we attacked after Kepler Station was defended the same way. They turned every building, every ship, every piece of ground into a weapon against us." He leaned back in his booth. "Some species fight with honor. Others fight with fury. Humans fight with imagination. They see possibilities, where others see only obstacles. That makes them the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy." Zara stared at the old veteran with new understanding. "Is that why the war ended?" she asked quietly. Kethvar smiled grimly. "That is another story, young one. But yes, Kepler Station was where many of us first realized the truth. You cannot conquer a people who turn their own homes into battlefields. You cannot defeat soldiers who make every defeat into a lesson for victory." The cantina noise seemed to return as his story ended. Other patrons continued their conversations, unaware of the tale that had been shared. But Zara would remember these words forever, and she finally understood why the name human was spoken with such respect and fear throughout the galaxy. Zara ordered another drink for herself and the old warrior. The cantina was getting busier as the night went on, but their corner booth remained quiet. She could tell that Kethvar had more stories to share, and each one seemed darker than the last. The battle at Kepler Station was just the beginning, Kethvar said after taking a long sip. The High Command thought it was just bad luck. They said humans got lucky because they knew the station better than we did. They were wrong. His 3 eyes stared at the ceiling, remembering. 6 months later, I was promoted to battle commander. They gave me a real army this time, 50,000 warriors from 12 different worlds. Our target was Titan Base, a human research facility on one of Saturn's moons. Kethvar's claws drummed against the table. Intelligence said 800. Humans worked there. Scientists mostly, with maybe 100 guards. The base was small and far from any help. High Command wanted to capture their research and prove that humans could be beaten. He laughed bitterly. 50,000 against 800. Those odds seemed impossible to lose. We surrounded the entire moon. No ships could get in or out. We had enough firepower to destroy cities. Victory was certain. Zara leaned forward again, knowing the story would not end as expected. I sent the usual surrender demand to Colonel Rick Hayes, their base commander. His reply came back in 5 minutes, just 2 words, Mark, come try. Kethvar shook his massive head. Those 2 words should have warned us. Humans do not make empty threats. When they say something, they mean it. But we were too proud to listen. The old warrior's voice grew heavy with memory. The siege began at dawn. We expected to break through their defenses in hours. The base looked simple from orbit, just a cluster of buildings connected by tunnels. Nothing special about it. He paused to drink again. We were wrong again. The humans had been preparing for months. Every building was a fortress. Every tunnel was a death trap. Every room had been turned into a weapon. Kethvar's scars seemed to darken as he remembered. Our first assault wave was 10,000 warriors, elite shock troops with the best equipment. They landed on the surface and moved toward the main buildings. Then the ground exploded under them. Zara gasped softly. The humans had buried mines everywhere. Not just regular explosives. Smart mines that could tell the difference between human and alien footsteps. The ground around the base became a killing field. The old warrior touched his chest where a deep scar ran across his ribs. Those who made it past the mines found worse waiting. Dr. Amy Foster had been a scientist before the war. She studied alien biology, learned how our bodies worked. When the fighting started, she used that knowledge to create weapons. Kethvar's voice dropped to a whisper. She made gas that attacked only Vorthak nervous systems. It did not kill us. That would have been mercy. Instead, it caused pain like nothing I had ever felt. Warriors would breathe it and fall to the ground screaming. But they stayed alive for hours. Zara shuddered at the thought. The humans released recordings of our warriors' suffering. They broadcast it to our entire fleet. They wanted us to know what happened to anyone who attacked their home. He stared into his drink. Captain Steve Miller led their special forces. He had only 20 soldiers, but they moved like ghosts across the moon's surface. Every night they struck our supply lines. Every morning we found destroyed equipment and dead guards. Kethvar's 3 eyes closed as he remembered. Miller's team never fought fair battles. They hit our fuel depot and disappeared. They sabotaged our communication arrays and vanished. They killed sentries and left no trace. We had 50,000 warriors, but we felt like we were fighting an invisible army. The cantina noise faded as other patrons moved away, sensing the darkness of the story. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. We could not break into the base, but we could not leave either. High Command kept sending orders to finish the job. Our warriors grew tired and scared. Kethvar's voice became bitter. That was when Colonel Hayes began his real campaign. He did not just want to defeat us, he wanted to break our spirits completely. Zara felt a chill run through her body. Dead alien soldiers started coming back to us. But they were not really dead. Hayes had his medical team perform surgery on them. Precise cuts that left them alive but changed. They could still talk, still think, but they looked like nightmares. The old warrior's hands shook slightly. These modified soldiers were sent back to our lines with messages carved into their flesh. Messages that said humans were just beginning to show us what they could do. The sight of our own people turned into living warnings drove many warriors mad. Kethvar took a long drink to steady himself. Hayes made sure we knew this was not random cruelty. Every modification was carefully planned. He wanted us to understand that humans could do anything they wanted to captured enemies. Death was not the worst thing that could happen to us. Zara could barely speak. How long did this go on? 8 months, Kethvar replied. 8 months of siege warfare against 800 humans. We lost more warriors to fear and madness than to actual fighting. He stared at his scarred hands. The worst day came near the end. Our bombardment had damaged the base's power core. Without power, their defenses would fail, and we could finally win. But the core was in a section flooded with deadly radiation. Kethivar's voice became very quiet. Dr. Foster volunteered to fix it. She knew the radiation would kill her in hours. She knew she would die in agony. But she went anyway, because her friends needed more time. The old warrior wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. We watched on our scanners as she worked in that poisoned chamber. Her body was dying, but her hands never stopped moving. She repaired systems, rerouted power, and restored the base's shields. It took her 6 hours to finish the job. Zara felt tears forming in her own eyes. When she was done, she sent a message to Colonel Hayes. She said the base could hold out for 3 more weeks with the repairs she had made. Then she sat down in that radioactive chamber and waited to die. Kethivar's voice broke slightly. Hayes broadcast her final words to our entire fleet. She said she was proud to serve with the bravest people in the galaxy. She said every moment of pain was worth it if her friends lived one more day. The cantina had grown very quiet around them. Dr. Foster died 12 hours later, but her sacrifice gave the base 3 more weeks of power, just like she promised. 3 more weeks of defying 50,000 alien warriors. Kethivar finished his drink and sat back. The siege finally ended when a human rescue fleet arrived. 200 humans had survived 8 months against impossible odds, but they were not done fighting yet. His voice became filled with something like awe. As our forces prepared to withdraw, Colonel Hayes triggered the base's self-destruction sequence. The entire facility was rigged with nuclear charges. He gave us 30 minutes to evacuate the surface. Zara stared in shock. He was going to destroy his own base? Not just the base, Kethivar corrected. Hayes told us that 1,500 of our warriors were still on the surface trying to capture equipment. He said they could leave with us, or they could die with the base. He did not care which. The old warrior's respect was clear in his voice. Some commanders would have been bluffing. Not Hayes. When our warriors did not retreat fast enough, he reduced the countdown to 15 minutes, then 10 minutes. He was completely serious about killing everyone, including himself. Kethivar looked directly at Zara. We evacuated everyone we could and pulled back to safe distance. Then we watched Titan Base disappear in atomic fire. Hayes and his remaining soldiers chose to die rather than let us have their research. He shook his head in amazement. The explosion killed another 1,500 of our warriors, who were too close to the blast. Hayes had turned his own death into a final weapon against us. Zara sat in stunned silence. That siege changed everything, Kethivar continued. We had won, technically. We controlled the moon after the humans were dead. But it felt like the greatest defeat of my military career. His 3 eyes stared into the distance. 50,000 warriors against 800 humans. 8 months to defeat them. Thousands of casualties. And in the end, we got nothing but a radioactive crater and the memory of people who would rather die than surrender. The old warrior signaled for another drink. Word of Titan Base spread through the entire Galactic Alliance. Every commander, every soldier, every politician heard the story. They learned that humans would pay any price for victory, even their own lives. Kethivar looked at Zara with tired eyes. That was the day I began to understand what we were really fighting. Not just another species, but something completely different. Something that saw death as just another tool of war. He raised his fresh drink in a toast to Dr. Amy Foster and Colonel Rick Hayes. They taught the galaxy what human courage really means. They showed us that some people cannot be conquered, no matter how many warriors you send against them. Zara raised her own drink, though her hand shook slightly. The 2 aliens drank in silence, honoring the memory of enemies who had become legends. The night was getting late, but Zara could not leave. Each story Kethivar told was more terrifying than the last. She needed to understand what made humans so different from every other species in the galaxy. There is one more story I must tell you, Kethivar said quietly. His 3 eyes looked haunted as he spoke. This one still gives me nightmares. Even now, years later, I wake up screaming from dreams about the ghost ship. Zara felt her skin grow cold, but she nodded for him to continue. 2 years after Titan Base, I was serving on the battleship Crimson Death. We were patrolling deep space looking for human vessels to capture. Our sensors found something strange, a human destroyer drifting without power. Kethvar's claws scraped against the table again. The ship was called HSS Neptune. It had been missing for 3 months. Our scans showed no life signs aboard, but the vessel was intact. High Command ordered us to board it and steal their technology. He paused to drink, his hands shaking slightly. I led the boarding party myself. 100 elite warriors, the best soldiers on our ship. We thought we were claiming an easy prize. How wrong we were. The cantina seemed to grow darker around them. The Neptune was cold and silent when we entered. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows in the corridors. Our boots echoed strangely, as if the sounds were coming from far away. Kethavar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We found signs of battle everywhere. Blast marks on the walls, dried blood on the floors, scattered equipment in the hallways. But no bodies, no crew, living or dead. Zara leaned closer, afraid to miss a word. The ship's computer logs told us what had happened. Captain Ben Rodriguez and his crew of 40 had been trapped behind enemy lines. Their drive system was damaged, and they could not escape. They knew death was coming. The old warrior stared at his drink. But Rodriguez was not like other captains. His ship carried an experimental quantum field generator. The technology was meant for stealth systems, but the captain had a different idea. Kethvar's 3 eyes focused on something only he could see. The log showed that Rodriguez gathered his crew for a final meeting. He told them they had 2 choices: surrender and die as prisoners, or try something that had never been attempted before. His voice became filled with a strange kind of awe. The crew voted to activate the quantum field at full power. They knew it might kill them all, but Rodriguez had calculated that it might do something else instead, something impossible. Zara held her breath. The quantum field was designed to shift matter between dimensions. Rodriguez thought they might be able to exist between life and death, between the real world and somewhere else. They would become ghosts, unable to die, but also unable to truly live. Kethavar shuddered as he remembered. My boarding party spread through the ship looking for valuable equipment. Everything seemed normal at first. Then Warrior Grixvold disappeared from the engine room. One moment he was there, the next moment gone. The old warrior's voice became strained. We searched for him but found nothing. No body, no blood, no signs of struggle, just empty space where a soldier used to be. Then it happened again, and again. Zara felt fear creeping through her body. That was when we saw them for first time. The crew of the Neptune, moving through the corridors like living shadows. They looked human, but wrong somehow. Their faces were pale and their eyes were empty. Kethavar's hands clenched into fists. Engineer Kate Sullivan appeared first. She walked through a solid wall as if it was made of air. Her body had terrible wounds that should have killed her, but she was still moving, still hunting. His voice cracked slightly. She looked at us with those dead eyes and smiled. Then she reached out and touched Warrior Zeph Cole. He screamed once and vanished, pulled into whatever dimension she came from. The cantina had grown completely silent around them. Navigator Paul Chen appeared next, hanging upside down from the ceiling. His neck was broken, but he was still talking, still giving orders to his ghostly crew. He laughed when he saw us, and the sound echoed from everywhere at once. Kethvar took a long drink to steady himself. We tried to fight them, but our weapons passed right through their bodies. They were already dead, so how could we kill them? They could touch us, but we could not touch them. Zara could barely speak. What did they want? Revenge, Kethvar replied simply. They wanted to drag us into their dimension, to make us join their eternal crew. Death had not stopped them from fighting. It had made them stronger. The old warrior wiped sweat from his forehead. More crew members appeared. Chief Medical Officer Tony Blake walked through floors and ceilings. Communications Officer Sandra White spoke to us through the ship's intercom system, even though she was standing right in front of us. His voice became filled with terror. Captain Rodriguez appeared last. Half his body was missing from some terrible wound, but he still wore his uniform with pride. He told us we were trespassing on his ship and trespassers had to pay the price. Kethvar's three eyes stared at nothing. The ghost crew began hunting us systematically. They knew every inch of their ship, every hiding place, every escape route. We were trapped in their domain, and they had all of eternity to catch us. He shuddered again. Warrior after warrior vanished into the quantum field. We could hear them screaming from somewhere far away, calling for help that would never come. They had joined the crew of the Neptune, doomed to sail forever between dimensions. Zara felt sick to her stomach. Squad leader Vexkali tried to reach the shuttle bay, but Engineer Sullivan appeared in front of him. She grabbed his arm and pulled him through the floor. We watched him disappear into solid metal, his face frozen in horror. Kethvar's voice became very quiet. I was running through the corridors, trying to find a way out, when Navigator Chen dropped from the ceiling in front of me. His broken neck made his head hang at a wrong angle, but he was still smiling. The old warrior touched a scar on his shoulder. He reached for me with fingers that passed through my armor like it was not there. I felt cold like nothing I had ever experienced. Cold that went deeper than my bones, deeper than my soul. His voice shook with remembered fear. Just before he could drag me into their dimension, the quantum field fluctuated. For a moment, the ghosts became solid again. I shot Chen with my plasma rifle, and he fell backward. Kethvar looked at his scarred hands. But he got up again. The wound healed instantly, and he laughed. He said death was just the beginning for his crew. They would sail the Neptune forever, hunting anyone who dared to board their ship. The cantina was so quiet that Zara could hear her own heartbeat. I reached the shuttle bay with only 12 warriors left from my 100-soldier boarding party. Captain Rodriguez was waiting for us there, standing between us and our escape craft. Kethvar's three eyes closed as he remembered. He looked at us with those terrible empty eyes and spoke in a voice that came from the grave. He said we could leave, but we had to carry a message back to our fleet. His voice became barely audible. Rodriguez told us to warn everyone that the Neptune would sail forever. Any ship that found her, any crew that boarded her would join his ghost crew in their eternal voyage between life and death. Kethvar opened his eyes and looked directly at Zara. He let us go then. We ran to our shuttle and fled back to the Crimson Death. But I could hear Navigator Chen's laughter following us, echoing through space itself. The old warrior finished his drink. Our captain ordered the Neptune destroyed with nuclear missiles. We watched the ship explode in atomic fire, thinking that would end the nightmare. His voice became filled with dread. But 3 days later, our sensors detected the Neptune again. Intact, undamaged, drifting in the same place. The ghost ship had returned from destruction itself. Zara stared in horror. We fled that system and never returned. But other ships have reported seeing the Neptune over the years. She appears without warning, silent and dark, crewed by the dead who refused to stay dead. Kethvar signaled for another drink with shaking hands. That was the day I learned the most terrifying truth about humans. They do not just fight until death. They fight beyond death. Even the grave cannot stop them from protecting what they love. He looked at Zara with haunted eyes. Rodriguez and his crew chose to become something that should not exist rather than surrender their ship. They became ghosts, spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them. But they remained human, and humans never give up. The old warrior raised his fresh drink in another toast. To the crew of the HSS Neptune. They showed the galaxy that death is not the end of human determination. They proved that some battles continue forever. Zara raised her drink with trembling hands, too terrified to speak. In the darkness of the cantina, she could almost hear the sound of ghostly laughter echoing from somewhere far away. Zara needed time to recover from the ghost ship story. She ordered strong drink and sat quietly for several minutes. The thought of dead humans still fighting made her skin crawl. But she knew Kethvar had more to tell, and she needed to hear it all. That ghost ship story is terrifying, she finally said. But you said the war ended. How did that happen if humans never surrender? Kethvar nodded slowly. His three eyes looked tired, but he continued his tale. The end came at New Geneva. That battle was my greatest victory and my worst nightmare. It was the day I learned that winning against humans can be worse than losing. He stared at his drink for a long moment. New Geneva was a human colony world. 2 million civilians lived there in cities scattered across 3 continents. The planet had farms, factories, and schools. It was peaceful and beautiful. Kethvar's voice became heavy with sadness. High Command chose it as our final target. They wanted to prove that humans could be conquered. They sent 500,000 warriors from across the galaxy, the largest invasion force ever assembled. Zara leaned forward again. The humans had only 50,000 colonial marines to defend the entire planet. The odds were 10 to 1 in our favor. Victory seemed certain this time. The old warrior's claws drummed against the table. General Dan Murphy commanded the human defenses. Intelligence said he was a simple soldier, not a genius like the other commanders we had faced. We thought this battle would be different. Kethvar laughed bitterly. We were wrong again. Murphy was not a genius, but he understood something the others did not. He knew that sometimes winning means being willing to lose everything. His voice dropped to a whisper. The invasion began at dawn. Our ships filled the sky like a dark cloud. Landing craft descended on every continent. The humans seemed to retreat immediately, abandoning their cities without a fight. Zara looked puzzled. That sounds like surrender. That is what we thought. Kethvar replied. Our forces occupied the cities easily, too easily. The humans had left everything behind, homes, shops, government buildings. It felt like victory. The old warrior shook his head sadly. But something was wrong. The cities were empty, but they were not abandoned. Food was still warm in some houses. Machines were still running in the factories. The humans had left only hours before we arrived. His 3 eyes focused on dark memories. That was when we discovered what General Murphy had really done. He had not retreated. He had prepared a trap larger than any planet. Kethvar's voice became filled with horror. Murphy had evacuated all 2 million civilians to underground shelters. Then he began destroying his own world. Water treatment plants were poisoned. Food storage centers were contaminated. Power stations were sabotaged. Zara gasped in shock. He was destroying his own planet? Every city, every farm, every factory, Kethvar confirmed. Murphy turned New Geneva into a poisoned wasteland before we could use any of it. He gave us a dead world instead of a living colony. The old warrior took a long drink. But that was just the beginning. Sergeant Nicole Adams led small teams of Marines in constant attacks. They would strike our positions and then disappear into the civilian population. His voice became strained. We could not tell the difference between human soldiers and human civilians. They all looked the same. When we retaliated against the cities, we killed innocent people. When we did nothing, the soldiers killed us. Kethvar touched several scars on his chest. Adams and her teams made every street a battlefield. Every building could hide enemies. Every civilian might be a spy. We controlled the cities, but we never felt safe in them. He stared into the distance. The worst part was the propaganda. Every time we killed civilians by mistake, the humans recorded it. They broadcast our crimes to their own people and to the galaxy. The old warrior's voice became filled with shame. Each innocent death made 10 more humans willing to fight. Each mistake we made turned into a recruiting tool for Murphy's resistance. We were creating our own enemies. Zara could see the pain in Kethvar's eyes. Private Tony Wright was just 18 years old. A boy, really, with no military training, but he volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the war. Kethvar's voice became very quiet. Wright let himself be captured by our intelligence officers. He carried a computer virus hidden in his body, designed to corrupt our communication networks. He knew he would be tortured for information. The old warrior wiped his eyes. For 3 days, our interrogators questioned him. He told them nothing useful, but the virus was already spreading through our systems. Every computer that scanned him became infected. His voice cracked slightly. Wright died under torture, but he never revealed the virus. By the time we discovered what he had done, our entire command network was blind. We could not coordinate attacks or call for reinforcements. Kethvar finished his drink and ordered another. That was when Director Sandra Bell revealed the final trap. She was the civilian administrator of New Geneva, a woman who had never fired a weapon in her life. His three eyes stared at nothing. Bell contacted me directly through the damaged communication system. She spoke calmly like she was discussing the weather. She told me that New Geneva's crust was filled with mining tunnels. Zara felt a chill run through her body. Every tunnel had been rigged with nuclear charges. Enough explosives to crack the planet's surface and kill everything on it. Bell controlled the detonation codes. Kethavar's voice became filled with awe and terror. She gave us a choice: withdraw completely from New Geneva, or watch as 2 million human civilians and 500,000 alien soldiers died together in atomic fire. The cantina had grown silent around them again. Bell was not bluffing. She showed us the detonation controls on our screens. Hundreds of nuclear charges scattered across 3 continents. She could destroy the entire world with a single command. His voice became barely audible. I asked her why she would kill her own people. Her answer still haunts me. She said some things were more important than life. Freedom was one of them. Kethavar looked directly at Zara. Bell told me that humans would rather die free than live as slaves. She said New Geneva would never belong to the Galactic Alliance, even if that meant New Geneva would cease to exist. The old warrior shook his head in amazement. She gave us 12 hours to evacuate, 12 hours to abandon the greatest invasion in galactic history. She sat in her underground bunker with her finger on the button, waiting to see what we would choose. His voice became filled with bitter respect. High Command ordered us to call her bluff. They said no one would really destroy their own world. They said humans valued life too much to commit mass suicide. Kethavar laughed without humor. I told them about Kepler Station, about Titan Base, about the ghost ship Neptune. I tried to explain that humans do not think like other species, but they would not listen. He stared at his fresh drink. So I made the choice myself. I ordered the evacuation without permission from High Command. 500,000 warriors retreated from New Geneva in defeat. Zara stared in shock. You disobeyed orders? I saved lives, Kethavar corrected. Bell was not bluffing. As our last ship left orbit, she sent us a final message. She said humanity appreciated our wisdom in choosing life over victory. The old warrior's voice became very quiet. But then she did something that proved her point forever. She detonated one small nuclear charge in an empty desert, just to show us that the threat was real. His 3 eyes closed as he remembered. The explosion was visible from space, a mushroom cloud rising from New Geneva's surface like a promise of death. Bell had shown us that she really would destroy everything rather than surrender it. Kethavar opened his eyes and looked at Zara. That explosion ended the war, not because we could not win, but because winning would cost everything. Bell had taught the galaxy that conquering humans was impossible. His voice became filled with strange admiration. You cannot defeat people who value freedom more than life. You cannot conquer soldiers who turn their own homes into weapons. You cannot rule civilians who choose death over slavery. The old warrior raised his drink in another toast. To Director Sandra Bell and Private Tony Wright, to General Murphy and Sergeant Adams, they showed the galaxy that some victories are not worth winning. Zara raised her own drink, her hands trembling. New Geneva still exists, Kethavar continued. The humans rebuilt their world after the war ended. But those nuclear charges are still there, waiting in the tunnels, a permanent reminder that humans will destroy what they love rather than lose it. He took a long drink and sat back. That was my last battle of the war. I resigned my commission and retired to this station. I had learned that fighting humans was like fighting the forces of nature itself. You might win battles, but you could never truly win the war. The cantina seemed to brighten slightly as his story ended. But the war did end, Zara said quietly. How? Kethavar smiled grimly. That is the final story, young one. The story of how enemies became allies, and how fear became respect. But that tale will have to wait for another drink. Zara nodded, needing time to process what she had heard. The image of Sandra Bell with her finger on a button that could destroy a world would stay with her forever. The cantina was much quieter now. Most of the other patrons had left for the night, leaving only a few scattered groups talking in low voices. Zara and Kethvar sat in their corner booth, surrounded by empty glasses and heavy memories. "You promised to tell me how the war ended," Zara said softly. "How did enemies become allies?" Kethvar nodded slowly. He looked older now, as if telling these stories had aged him years in a single night. After New Geneva, everything changed. Word spread through the Galactic Alliance about what humans would do to win, about the nuclear charges, about Belle's willingness to destroy her own world. His three eyes stared at the table. Other commanders began sharing their own stories, tales of humans who fought beyond death, who turned every defeat into a lesson, who valued freedom more than life itself. The pattern became clear. Kethvar's voice grew thoughtful. High Command realized they faced an impossible choice. They could destroy humanity completely, or they could make peace. There was no middle ground with these creatures. Zara leaned forward one last time. But destroying them would have been possible, right? With enough ships, enough weapons? The old warrior shook his head sadly. "That was the trap, young one. To destroy humanity completely, we would have to glass every human world. Kill every man, woman, and child. Burn their cities and poison their planets." His voice became heavy, with understanding. "But doing that would make us the monsters. The galaxy would never trust us again. Other species would unite against us out of fear. We would win the war but lose everything else." Kethvar took a small sip from his glass. There was another problem too. Humans had allies by then. Other species who admired their courage, even if they feared their methods. The war was spreading, beyond just humans in the Alliance. He stared into the distance. So the High Command made a decision that shocked everyone. They sent peace negotiators to Earth, asking for talks to end the war. Zara looked surprised. "The humans agreed to negotiate?" "Immediately," Kethvar replied. "That was another surprise. Humans fight like demons when attacked, but they will always choose peace when it is offered honestly." The old warrior's voice became respectful. "The negotiations took place on this very station, Epsilon Prime, neutral ground where both sides could meet safely. I was here as a military advisor." His three eyes focused on memories from years past. The human delegation was led by Commander Jake Morrison, the same man who had defeated me at Kepler Station. I recognized him immediately, but he showed no anger or hatred toward me. Kethvar touched one of his scars unconsciously. Morrison had aged during the war. His hair was gray now, and he bore scars from many battles. But his eyes were still sharp, still intelligent, still dangerous. He paused to drink. The negotiations were strange. Humans did not demand territory or tribute. They did not want revenge for the attacks on their worlds. They asked for only one thing, a guarantee that the war would never happen again. Zara looked puzzled. "That seems too simple." "Simple but not easy," Kethvar corrected. "The guarantee they wanted was a mutual defense treaty. Any attack on human worlds would be treated as an attack on all Alliance worlds. Any attack on Alliance worlds would bring human retaliation." His voice became filled with grudging admiration. Morrison explained the logic. He said humans and aliens were stronger together than apart. He said the galaxy faced threats bigger than any one species could handle alone. The old warrior shook, his head in amazement. The man who had spent years killing Alliance soldiers was now offering to protect Alliance worlds. The same humans who had been our worst enemies wanted to become our closest allies. Kethvar's voice grew quiet. But there was a cost to this alliance. Humans insisted on sharing their military knowledge with Alliance forces, their tactics, their strategies, their willingness to sacrifice everything. He looked directly at Zara. They wanted to teach us how to fight like humans, how to turn any situation into a weapon, how to never give up, no matter how hopeless things seemed. The cantina seemed to grow even quieter around them. The treaty was signed 6 months later. The Terran Galactic War officially ended, but for many of us veterans, the real war was just beginning. Zara tilted her head in confusion. "What do you mean?" Kethvar's voice became very personal. Fighting humans had changed us. We had seen things that no soldier should see. We had learned That war could be worse than death, that some enemies never truly surrender. He touched his scarred face. Many veterans suffered from what humans call post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, flashbacks, constant fear. This condition was unknown among other species before we fought humans. The old warrior's 3 eyes showed old pain. We had learned to think like humans during the war, to see every situation as a potential battlefield, to trust no one completely, to always be ready for the worst possible outcome. His voice cracked slightly. Some veterans could not adjust to peace. They saw enemies everywhere, threats in every shadow. The war had ended, but it continued in their minds. Kepler finished his drink and sat back. That was when the humans did something that shocked the galaxy again. They sent their own veterans to help us. Soldiers who had fought against us came to counsel us. Zara stared in amazement. Your enemies helped you heal? Commander Morrison himself spent 2 years on Alliance worlds, teaching our veterans how to cope with their trauma. He said soldiers who had survived war together shared a bond stronger than species or politics. The old warrior's voice became warm with memory. Morrison worked with me personally. He helped me understand that the nightmares would fade, that the fear would lessen. He taught me that surviving war was not something to be ashamed of. Kepler looked around the cantina. That is why I tell these stories now. Morrison said that remembering the war correctly was important, that we should honor both sides, remember both the courage and the cost. His 3 eyes focused on Zara. The young must understand why peace matters. They must know what war really costs, what humans are capable of when threatened. Only then can they appreciate what we have built together. Just then, the cantina door opened. A figure walked in, an older human male with gray hair and numerous scars. Zara gasped when she recognized him from Kepler's descriptions. Commander Morrison, Kepler said respectfully, standing up slowly. The human smiled and walked over to their booth. His eyes were kind but alert, exactly as Kepler had described. Hello, old friend, Morrison said in surprisingly good Vorthak. Still telling war stories? Kepler gestured to Zara. Young Zara wanted to understand why humans are so feared and respected. I thought she should hear the truth. Morrison nodded and sat down across from them. The truth is important, he agreed. But so is perspective. Kepler tells good stories, but he makes us sound more heroic than we really were. The human's voice became serious. We fought so hard because we were terrified. Every battle felt like the end of everything we loved. Fear made us dangerous, not courage. Kepler shook his head. You underestimate yourselves, Commander. Humans showed the galaxy what determination really means. Morrison smiled sadly. We showed the galaxy what desperation looks like. The difference is important. He looked at Zara directly. The war taught both our species valuable lessons. Humans learned that we were not alone in the universe. We learned that other species could be trusted, could become friends and allies. His voice became thoughtful. The Alliance learned that humans fight differently than anyone else, that we see possibilities where others see only problems, that we refuse to accept defeat under any circumstances. Morrison raised an imaginary glass. But the most important lesson was that former enemies can become the strongest allies. The bonds forged in war can be transformed into bonds of peace. Zara looked between the 2 veterans. Do you still have nightmares about the war? Both Kepler and Morrison nodded. Every survivor does, Morrison replied. But we also have good dreams. Now dreams of the peace we built together, of the cooperation between our species. Kepler raised his glass. To the Terran Galactic War. May it be the last war between our peoples. Morrison raised his own glass. To the peace that followed. May it last forever. Zara raised her glass as well, though her hands still trembled, slightly. The 3 of them drank in silence, honoring both the war and the peace that came after. As the night grew later, other veterans began approaching their table. Humans and aliens who had fought in the war, now living together on the neutral station. They shared drinks and stories, enemies who had become friends. Zara watched in amazement as former soldiers laughed together, comparing scars and swapping tales. The war had ended years ago, but its lessons lived on in the bonds between these unlikely allies. She finally understood why humans were both feared and respected throughout the galaxy. They had shown that some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth destroying everything for. But they had also shown that peace was the greatest victory of all. As the cantina finally closed, Zara walked home through the quiet corridors of Epsilon Prime. In the distance, she could hear the sound of human and alien voices singing together, an old war song that had been transformed into a hymn of peace. The stories Kethavar had told would stay with her forever. But more importantly, she now understood the lesson behind them.